Hello, my name is Sarah Foley. I also go by my brand name, which is Vertical Blonde. Aloha, and thank you so much for this opportunity to come and speak and offer just some extra goodness from the day. No doubt there is a lot of beautiful healing, love, and just positive energy flowing in that room as people come together for the common desire to help another person through a hard time. And first of all, I'd like to just say that I'm so sad I couldn't be there in person. And so having this opportunity to speak to you virtually is, I don't take it lightly. So thank you again. I thought that I would kind of start by really calling it out that, you know, if you're human and watching this, chances are pretty high you have also gone through your own set of hard times and trials and challenges. I have also gone through my own challenges. I was paralyzed on an ATV accident. I've gone through divorce twice, struggled with body image issues, dealing with single motherhood, struggles in business, struggles of knowing my own belief and values. And yet, as I've gone through it time after time, I've always been hit with this question in my head of what makes some people swim and others sink? How can one person thrive through the hardest of times and others, it seems to consume them to a point that they just can't get back up? And so with that, I'd love to share what I've learned and what I've kind of gathered as just that of how to help you swim when adversity strikes, when your own challenges strike. About 10 years ago now, can't believe it's been 10 years since I've taken a step or stood on my own 2 feet. I was on a 4-wheeling ride with my new boyfriend, and we were down in Bryan Head, Utah. And as we were going along, we were there with another couple. We were each on our own 4-wheeler, on our own vehicle. And the guys went on up ahead to make sure that it was a safe trail and we were good to keep going on the other side. It kind of went around this bend. And as the other guys went on up ahead, the girls stayed down below. And at one point we see the one boyfriend waving us up. You're good, come on up. And so we start going up. And what we don't know was that my boyfriend was coming down that hill to come get us and let us know that it was safe. My boyfriend went to every means possible to ensure my safety. He made sure I was on the biggest, most sturdy of the machines. He made sure I had a helmet. He gave me a course on how to use the machine. We only kind of went on this fire access road, no crazy trails. He again went on up ahead to make sure that it was safe. And yet, as I came around that bend, I panicked. And I still remember it clear as day. I remember jerking the wheels to the right, just thinking, get off the trail. But I remember looking to my left. And I remember seeing him push himself so far to the other side of the trail, and he was kind of against the wall of the mountainside, that if it had just kept going straight, everything would have been okay. But I didn't. I jerked the wheels, trying to get out and off the trail, and my front wheels hit a ditch, and I started flipping through the air. And I can still remember the sound and feeling of the crunching of bone as this machine landed on me multiple times and finally throwing me against this fallen tree. I remember lying there very coherent, just thinking, I'm going to be okay. Like, things like this don't happen to people like me. I'm a good person. I follow all the rules. Like, I try to always do the right thing. Why am I lying here and not able to move or feel half of my body? No doubt there's been a time in your life where you've thought, things like this don't happen to people like me. I've been a good person. Follow the rules, or maybe you don't. But I try to do the right thing. My intentions are good. Why is this happening? Many years after I got injured, I remember becoming very aware that even though I never said the words out loud, I was harboring a lot of resentment and anger towards Sean, my boyfriend. And even though to his face, I was kind and had smiles and, doing all the right things, in my head, anytime something would go wrong, maybe I'd fall out of my chair, or my bladder would have a mind of its own, or I couldn't reach something on the shelf, or I woke up with lots of pain, my immediate instinct was to blame. And I blamed heavily. I blamed angrily. And in my head, I would just think, if you hadn't put me in this effing chair, I wouldn't be dealing with this problem right now. And I became really aware of this blame and resentment as I was at a personal development conference. And we were guided through some meditations. And it became very clear in those meditations that I was projecting all of my blame, and that I wasn't in a state of acceptance. I was in a state of blame and resentment. And that resistance in my body, in my mind, my soul, like everywhere in me, caused an effect. It caused a relationship to go very south between him and I. And I look back and I'm able to take full ownership of my part in that. That even if we say we're okay, if inside we're not, it's going to come out. It's going to come clear and it's going to come through. And there was, if any of you guys follow Mel Robbins, I love Mel Robbins. She's all about that accountability, right? She's all about getting through hard times. And she was having her new show, and she was looking for good storylines for her new show. And out of instinct, I wrote in, I've been in an accident and I'm struggling with how to forgive the person I'm holding blame towards. And they picked it. All of a sudden, it was like a whirlwind. And I got flown out to New York City. I was going to be on the Mel Robbins show, and I was going to forgive my husband. Like, I was doing all the things. And so we got onto the show, and I remember feeling all prepped, all ready to go. I knew what I wanted to say, and I was ready to rock and roll. And she gets me on camera, and she immediately disarms me just by her questions and opening it up. And I began to word vomit all the things I'd been harboring about how horrible he was and how entitled I needed to be and how I deserved everything and he was bad and this was bad. But I just kept spewing. And have you ever been in one of those moments where you're like, I can't stop, it just keeps coming out? So here I was on national television, completely bashing my husband. And I remember kind of, you kind of take a breath finally, finally take a breath. And I looked at her and she was just kind of in like, holy moly, like state of shock. And she just looks at me and she just says, you're still in the ditch. You're still in that ditch. It's been 7 years or whatever it had been. She said, you're still in the ditch. And I remember thinking, yeah, but he put me in the ditch. Like it's his fault I'm in the ditch. And she said, it's regardless how we got there, we are the only ones that can get ourselves out of the ditch. Whether we crawl our way out, grow out, heal out, we have to get ourselves out of the ditch. That moment was super eye-opening. One, it was really eye-opening that never go on national television when you got stuff that needs to be healed and worked out. Lesson number one. All right, now we got lesson number one out of the way. Lesson number two, I'm going to take you through what I feel really has served me to get me to that place of swimming and getting out of the ditch and taking ownership for that, and how I can heal and do all the things that I need to do to ensure that I don't keep myself in any ditch any longer than I need to be. And then the third lesson is that everything is serving us. What if we looked at everything in life as it's serving us? I remember getting off of that stage from Mel Robbins and just being like, oh my God, that was horrible. That was such an awful experience. And I felt so much guilt and so much confusion and like, oh my gosh, what did I say? And what just happened? And oh my gosh, but I'm a good person. Like, why did I put all up in my head? And then after I finally took a breath, I thought, that one thing was what I'd been needing to hear all these years, that I was still in the ditch. Didn't matter how I got there. What mattered was that I got myself out. So I've kind of been thinking, how do I give that to you as sort of a step-by-step process that you can fill in the blanks with your own trials or challenges or whatever you're going through, that you could fill in the blank, but that these steps were pretty universal. And that first step is awareness. That first step really comes back to, how am I in this situation? What is my part? And again, this is not to beat yourself up for whatever ditch that you are in. Do not stay there in that place of getting down on yourself or blaming yourself, but rather to empower you to be able to get out of the ditch. Because if we don't start with awareness and how this is affecting us, really getting in touch to, how is this making me feel? What are the things that I need to work through? Being aware enough to not choke back the tears, but rather to allow them to play out their course. In that amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score, the author talks about how our body is basically the vessel in which we process and release our emotions. And we also store them. So being really, really aware of what needs to come up, what needs to get worked out. If you have these little thoughts or inspirations of people to call that could help, or things that you could do that would help, such as like mindfulness practices or exercise or movement or massage or things that come up, if you have moments of inspiration, to really act on those. That is your body telling you what it needs to work through this. And this first step is also where the most crucial part is, and that is acceptance. For the longest time, I was so terrified of accepting that this had happened to me, that I was now paralyzed in a wheelchair, because I thought if I accepted it, then that somehow gave a message to my body and God and anything else out there that I was okay with it and I didn't need to heal or walk again, ever again. When in fact, acceptance doesn't mean that. Acceptance simply means I'm accepting this is my starting point, and I'm not living in the past, which is where resentment and blame lie. I am here in the present. Acceptance is in the present moment. Acceptance is saying, this is where I am. What do I need to do to heal, to work through this, to journey through this? What do I need to do? It is accepting what I need to do to get out of the ditch. It is accepting the fact that I am in the ditch. And it is not saying I'm resisting the fact that I'm in here in the first place. Acceptance is the most powerful place that we can be, because it puts us back in the driver's seat. It puts us back in control of what we need to do next. And then the second is our ability. It's really kind of funny coming from a person with a disability, but so often we can get focused on whatever is disabling us, right? What is not going well, what is not in our control, what we can't do, everything that is working against us. That's kind of where we tend to go, because it kind of feels good to have something else to blame. It kind of feels good to have an excuse so that we don't have to do the work. You feel me on that? Because I have used my disability as an excuse way more than it actually has been an excuse. If I'm scared to do something, I'll just blame it on my disability. Oh, I can't do that. It's not accessible. Whatever. If you really need to do something, there is a way. What can you do? So this step is all about reframing of what is in my control. What can I do, rather than what is out of my control and what can't I do? Again, it's about putting you back in that driver's seat. We don't have to like where we are, but we do have to like the fact, or we can like the fact, that we are in control of what we want to do with it, right? So it's not so much the fact that we are in the ditch. It's about us realizing, oh, it's all in my control, that I can look at different resources to help me get myself out of the ditch, instead of blaming and using the ditch as the excuse as why we can't move forward. All right, step 3, alignment. Alignment is a really interesting thing, because law of attraction and all of these things all state that we have to become what we want to attract, right? That we have to be whatever it is that we want to attract. And a lot of people will think of, okay, if I just think about it enough, if I just focus on that's what I want, but our actions might not be aligned with that. A really good example, I've got a friend of mine, we had just recently had a really beautiful conversation, and she's having a really tough time with her ex, and they share a child together. And she's like, all I want is peace. She just kept saying the word peace. I just really want peace. And then later in the conversation, she said, I just really want him to get hit by a truck. Like, she was in such anger about it. She wants peace, yet she doesn't want to let go of the anger, right? If we want peace, we have to become peaceful. We have to take that first step. So often we're waiting for everything else to get aligned so that we can swoop in and take a place in their part. But when we do that, we're completely missing the point. And then her and I shared a laugh about it. She said, oh, I guess that's really not very peaceful, is it? No, she's wanting peace on her terms. She's wanting peace from him, but she doesn't want to change anything that she's doing to make the peace a reality. So if we want healing, if we want to really swim our way out of our ditch, if instead of sinking deeper into it, if we truly want to swim our way out, then we have to get aligned with that. We have to be willing to release all the blames, all the resentments, everything, all the excuses as to why we can't. And we have to become swimmers. We have to become as someone that would already be out of the ditch. What would they be doing? They'd be in a place of acceptance. They will have processed and healed. They will have asked for help. They will have seen what they can do. They will take action that they are accountable for. They are taking ownership and acting as though they're already out of the ditch. Now, given wherever you are in your life or whatever circumstances you may be dealing with, some of this might be really fresh, right? If you're going through an illness or an accident or a breakup or a job loss or whatever, any kind of situation where life has flipped you upside down, when you're in the midst of it, when it's really, really fresh, again, give yourself grace. And you might be in that first step for a long time. Just getting to that place of acceptance and love and ownership and awareness of what feelings need to get processed. And that's okay. All of these steps are not going to happen overnight. And so this is just a really gentle, friendly reminder to allow yourself time and space in each of these steps. Because the last step is action. And if you followed me for a while, or maybe you're new to me, but one of my favorite sayings is that confidence is an action word. We only gain confidence through action. That's it. We can't think our way more confident. We can't ponder it. We can't journal it. We can't do anything that does not, we have to take action. Like nothing that we can think or ponder or do inside our brain is going to give us more confidence. The only way to gain confidence, and by confidence, I mean that ability and belief in ourselves to swim our way out of the ditch instead of sink back into it, is by taking action. It may be messy. It may be something as simple as asking someone, I need support. I need love. I need to feel seen right now because I feel like I'm drowning. It could be you being that friend and taking action with someone else that you see is sinking. This could be you just processing those emotions. This could be going through a forgiveness practice towards whoever you're blaming. All of these actions add up. It's not going to be some lightning bolt, right? It's about you creating momentum in your healing and growth. This momentum in what I call becoming vertical. I love this idea of becoming vertical because this idea of becoming anything it's the journey piece. It's not, I am vertical and being vertical. It's a process of becoming vertical. It's that process of becoming whatever it is that you want to embody, but giving yourself grace that on one hand, the process never ends. And on the other hand, that's okay. Because sometimes when we feel like we've arrived is when we need to buckle up. That is literally what happened to me the day I got hurt. I went out for a hike with Sean early that morning. And I remember looking out into like this beautiful sea of red rock formations. It was so gorgeous. And I remember I just looked at him and I said, my life is perfect. There's nothing about it I'd change. And in my head, I rattled off. I was like, gosh, I'm in love. I've got this going for me. I've got a great job, making more money than I ever made. Like, life's perfect. Like, There's nothing I'd change. And then 4 hours later, I was lying on the dirt with no feeling or movement from below my rib cage. I had broken every rib, snapped my spinal cord, snapped my clavicle, and the bones in my spine, the bones in my spine had compressed my spinal cord. And it was cutting off the connection from my brain to the lower half of my body. And what's really interesting is that Life Flight had come an hour and a half later, and they were taking me into surgery. And I called my mom. She was on her way. She'd already gotten a flight from Salt Lake to Las Vegas. She just landed in Las Vegas, goes to grab her phone out of her purse, and it's ringing, and it's me. And I'm kind of doped up. I'm a little out of it. She said, but you just sounded like this scared little girl. And you just said, Mom, the doctors think if they can relieve the pressure, I'll be able to walk again. That step 3 of alignment is the process of you relieving the pressure so that you can walk whatever path is meant for you. Thinking back to how I started this story about how when I was lying there, I remember just thinking, things like this don't happen to people like me. When in fact they do. Really hard things will happen to strengthen really strong people. I love my life. There's so much about it that is frustrating. There's so much about it that it's hard. But I love what a catalyst my accident was to meeting this version of myself. And I really don't think that I could have met this version of myself without something so drastic happening. In the midst of it, it feels like hell. It's painful, it's scary, it's terrifying, it's lonely, it's heartbreaking, it's debilitating, it is paralyzing. And yet, I discovered what a great swimmer I was. I believe that for you too. Whatever's going on in your life now, whatever has gone on in the past, whatever has come to mind as you've listened to this story, it's there for you. I believe that. I've always been a hopeless optimist, but I really believe that. I'm living proof of it. When I first got hurt, my aunt came in for a hug. I had a waiting room full of people and they kind of filed in one by one, not really knowing what to say, and came in for these gentle hugs, and they didn't know what to do and no one knew what to say. And my aunt came in and I just whispered in her ear, I just said, why? And she pulled away. She actually pushed me away. She said, don't you ever ask why. Searching for that answer is going to eat you alive. And that answer, those kinds of answers will come when they're meant to. She said she remembers looking around the room at my mom and my grandpa, her father, and everyone just looking at her like, how could you talk to her that way? Like she just broke, like she's paralyzed. Like, how could you talk to her that way? And it was the best thing that anyone could have ever told me in that moment. Because I didn't. I got to work on my healing and my growth instead of being busy asking why and trying to search for why. Until one day it hit me. We are who chooses why. We get to choose whatever meaning we want to give. That is our ability. So if you are consumed with a story about why something's happened and you hate that story, you hate that reason, change it. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. It can take you in whatever direction you want it to take you. And I've chosen vertical. Everything that's happened in my life has all taken me vertical. When we get consumed with that blame and we start to rely on that as sort of our crutch through it, because sometimes it feels better to put the blame on something or someone else. There's a beautiful Hawaiian practice that absolutely changed my life in every sense of the word. And when I was really, really heavy in my own blame and resentment towards Sean, this practice was introduced to me. I got to learn it in Hawaii, and it's become a little bit more mainstream, but I'd actually like to tell you the real story of how it's intended. So the practice is called Ho'oponopono. If you want to write that down, Ho'oponopono. And its literal translation is to make right. Actually, the word pono, kind of a extension on that, the word pono is your responsibility. Your pono in life is why you are here. They also refer this to also your kuleana. The two can be mixed together. But pono is to do the right thing, not just for yourself and another person, but like for the greater good. And then kuleana is your personal responsibility of why you are here in life. And when we are all fulfilling our own kuleana, we benefit, others benefit, and the world benefits. So think about your own kuleana. Think about your package. How you are packaged is how I like to think of it. Your background, your passions, your likes, your talents, your skills, your background and your professional background, your family, what you look like, everything has been packaged for your own kuleana, your responsibility of why you are here and what you are here to do. And I kind of think of this as like our ultimate potential. We're fulfilling our ultimate potential. And when we do that, it is for the greater good. It's not just for our own good, but there's a bigger picture in play. And think about it. If I'm living at my potential and it's helping another person live at their potential, something they're doing is helping another person live at their potential, and so on and so on and so on. So it's a really powerful philosophy and concept when we can all fully step into our kuleana. And I found that really helps me when I'm dealing with any kind of imposter syndrome, because I start to think, well, I may be feeling like I'm not good enough, or I'm, an imposter in some way. But when I really think about it, if I don't fulfill this, I'm doing a disservice to others. So back to the Ho'oponopono, because I think all these concepts are really powerful for people, regardless where you are in life. Ho'oponopono, its translation is to make right. And there's a backstory on the Ho'oponopono exercise. And it was from Dr. Hugh Len, Dr. Haleakala, I always say the first name a little wrong, Haleakala, oh my gosh, Dr. Hugh Len, we'll just go with that, okay? So Dr. Hugh Len, he came into this, it was a criminal psychiatric ward facility. And basically this is like where the bad of the bad are. They were either awaiting trial, or this is where they've been sent after trial for things like rape and murder and just really, really bad things. Okay. And the story goes that like the paint wouldn't even stay on the walls. This was the worst place to be in. All of the staff were like constantly on like sick leave, like no one wanted to work. And these psychiatrists would come in, try to help the patients, and then they would quickly be on their way because they couldn't hang. And Dr. Hugh Len came in one day and they were like, okay, here's another one. Like, what is he going to do? And he wouldn't meet with any of the patients. He would come in, he would go into his office, and he would sit with each of their files. And what he was doing is he was doing this practice of Ho'oponopono. And he was healing the parts of him that were making him see these people in this negative way. Kind of that old story that if you knew, I think it was Mr. Rogers that said it, like if you know anyone's story, there isn't anyone that you can love once you know their story. People don't just become and do bad things on accident. There's something that has caused them. So going back to our Kuleana, imagine if people were living in that space, we wouldn't have these moments and people that get sort of bred out of these hardships and these horrible backgrounds. So Dr. Hugh Len would come in with these files and he would do this practice, and he called it bringing all data down to zero. So he was bringing all of his judgment about these people down to zero, so he could see them in a completely neutral light. So he would come in and he would do this practice. It was 4 lines. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. He's saying, I love you. I have love for you and the person that you are at your core, believing that all people at their core are good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I've seen you. I'm sorry for my judgment towards you. I'm sorry for how I have reacted or treated you based on that judgment. Please forgive me. Please forgive me for how I've treated you based on those judgments. And then thank you. Thank you for your forgiveness. Thank you for what you've offered me. Thank you. And he would do this practice day in and day out. And then some of the staff were getting a little curious, like, what's going on here? So they would start asking him questions. What are you doing? What is this? And teach me this practice. And so they would start to do this practice on each other and on the patients going through this. And little by little, the energy and the experience that people were having in this facility changed. All of a sudden, the grounds came back. The things started to grow. All of a sudden, the paint was now on the walls. All of a sudden, when the staff and the patients were walking down the hallway, before it was like shackles and on opposite ends of the hallway, opposite walls, now they were walking alongside each other. The patients weren't so aggressive, and little by little, things started to heal and things started to shift. And all of a sudden, they were seeing each other in a very different way. And the story goes on that towards the end of this facility, because the facility actually ended up closing down because people had been marked as healed, they had done their time and been released, or it was down to just a few that they went on to different facilities because it wasn't big enough to hold them. Towards the end, the patients and the staff were playing tennis together. Everything changed. There's that saying with Dr. Wayne Dyer where he says, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. when we change the way we see people, when we change the way we see our circumstances, when we see the way we see things, those people, circumstances, and things totally change. So I'd love to teach this practice to you. Again, you are doing it towards another person, but you're actually doing the practice on yourself. So you can do this towards yourself too, but you're doing the practice toward another person, but to yourself. So think of a person that you maybe have resentment towards, anger, any of these emotions towards. You can close your eyes. I like to place one hand right underneath my rib cage. You can place the other hand on your chest and your heart. And towards this person, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Now we continue. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Now I want you to do it towards yourself. Whatever you've been blaming yourself for, hating on yourself for, resenting yourself for, bring this focus inward towards yourself. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Sending you love as you change the way you see others and yourself. It can be a new process. It can be intense. It can be emotional. And that's good. That's a really good thing. So give yourself grace. If it feels uncomfortable, just know that that's normal. And it'll be really interesting that when you start to change the way you see others, how others change. And when you start to change the way you see yourself, you will change. Thank you so much for your time today. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I'd love to hear from you. It always makes me feel so good to hear, what is that one thing that really stood out? How did it shift things for you? I really hope this has offered you hope, inspiration, strategy, clarity, all the things that I really needed when I first got injured. I really hope I've offered that for you. To everyone there, amazing. I'm so, so honored to be able to speak, and just sending so much love, so much love, so much healing to all of you. Now let's go raise some money for our girl. Let's help her through this. Let's help her overcome. Let's help her swim out of her own ditch. Knowing she's not going to be there very long. She's got a lot of support and a lot of love. Thank you again. Aloha.